Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Jessica Dobson joins me now. And Jess, we're keeping a close eye there on the Caribbean right now for what could be future Sara.
Yep. Yeah, we are keeping a close eye on this disturbance. So far, it has a 90% chance of development, but it's going to be kind of this area, this general area across the southwestern Caribbean that we're going to be watching really closely for one, any sort of signs of development. We do know that the hurricane hunters are going to be flying into the system a little later today, so we will get more information. So that's always very helpful when we have that. And they could find tropical storm conditions. So if that is the case, we would have tropical storm Sara. So that is one of the reasons why we have a 90% chance of development. So we're pretty certain at this point that we're going to at least get a tropical depression. Tropical storm is pretty likely at this point as well. Whether or not we reach hurricane strength is going to be dependent on a lot of factors with this path. So we're going to dive into it. But as of right now, it's this area in general that we're watching for, any sort of more organized thunderstorm development there across the southern Caribbean. Now, when it comes to the latest spaghetti models, here's what we know so far. It really takes a while to meander out in the Caribbean, kind of almost does a loop-to-loop, at least with the latest information we know, the latest data. But you'll notice there's a pretty good shift and a pretty good consensus that it's going to be making a path close to the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's likely going to make some land interaction. Now, just how long it spins over the Yucatan Peninsula and how far west it goes, that's going to be one of the big factors determining just how strong this gets and also kind of the direct path it's going to take. Because if it does spend more time out over the Yucatan Peninsula, by the time it reemerges out into the Gulf waters, which are much cooler, it is going to be a much weaker system, and that would be good news. That would mean that we would have fewer impacts for us in Central Florida. But that being said, there is still a pretty good consensus at this point that we are going to be expecting this kind of more northeasterly turn. So that's what we're going to be watching very closely in terms of whether or not we have more direct impacts, whether it's South Florida or maybe closer towards Central Florida. That being said, we do have an approaching cold front, and historically speaking, cold fronts can kind of move a little faster than scheduled time. So that would also do us a lot of favors in helping to kind of absorb this system, maybe help push it out to sea, steer it out to sea a little further south as well. And that would keep it out of much of Florida's hair. So that's a possibility as well. Now, when it comes to just climatologically speaking, we typically do have a number of fronts this time of year. We have one on the way this weekend, and that could be a big component in helping kind of block this and steer it a little further to the south. But again, just how far and how sharp of a turn it takes is going to be a huge factor as well in determining if and when we'll see any impacts from this in particular. So here's just kind of our big takeaway so far. We are going to see Sara form possibly as early as the end of today. Now, whether or not it reaches hurricane strength, again, that's going to be one of the other questions we still have. Impacts are growing more likely at this point from what we know, but still there's a lot of uncertainty with just how long those impacts would last and how intense they would be, because if it went further south, that would mean less rain, a lot less in the way of winds. Some models even indicate that it moves so far south that we would only get 1 to 2 inches of rain. But that's something we are all taking with a grain of salt, because we're likely not going to see impacts, if any, until about a week from now. And if we did, it would be more so the heavy rain and also the wind potential, of course.